Breaking news this week in Metropolis. Shameless plug right off to the start, but I'm here with Mr. James Steele.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
James, tell me a little bit about yourself, man.
My name's James Steele. I'm originally from Essex in the UK and moved up to Norfolk nearly 10 years ago now, which is on the east coast of the UK. I work as a recruitment consultant in the oil and gas industry, so nothing exciting there really. But my main passion at the moment, other than football, soccer for you, I'm guessing, my main passion at the moment is podcasting, and I've been involved in it for probably 6 or 7 years, I'd say now. I started off actually trying to encourage one of my mates to do a podcast because he's a massive wrestling fan, as I am as well. And he's very knowledgeable. He's a lot more knowledgeable than I am. And I said to him, like, your views and your ideas are pretty good. I think you should sort out a podcast. And I've been on that a few times. And then through work, my boss, who is King Porteous, his real name is Matt, we decided just from our general chats that we have day to day in the office and the laughs that we have, that we should make a podcast. And that was last year in April. So we've been doing This Week in Metropolis for over a year now, and yeah, really enjoying it.
So what exactly is This Week in Metropolis? Because when you say the title, I immediately think everything that happens to do with Marvel, DC Comics, anything superhero or supervillain related.
Yeah, kind of. The fault behind the title was mainly Matt's idea, but we discuss a lot of things to do with comic book related stuff, but it tends to kind of go from it's pop culture chat basically, and we'll talk about things that have caught our eye over the last week without going into things that are a little bit too heavy, which you see on the news all the time. You know, we've touched upon the COVID-19 and how it's affected us in certain aspects of our lives, but not gone into it and reporting daily figures or what we've seen in the news about it. It's more we'll talk about kind of geeky stuff, I guess. So tech and things that, like I say, things that have caught eye. It might be movies, it might be TV, it might be music, it might be
the Xbox One's coming out, but coronavirus has killed half the people.
Exactly.
Literally, I was listening to your episode on Endgame, one of your first ones, and then I was like, yeah, the reason why I didn't go see that movie was because it was 3 hours long, and I'm the type of guy that if I don't get the end seat, I end up having to get up to piss a lot. So I'm like, let me not drink liquid for 24 hours so I can go see this movie. And I ended up watching it on my phone on one of those like back sites, but it was like half of it where it kept loading to the point you just got pissed off and turned it off. And I was like, this movie is terrible. And then I did a podcast with my buddy Chuck, and he goes, hey, man, let me just give you my Disney Plus account. I'm like, okay, well, if you want to do that. And then next thing you know, I started watching Endgame, and I've watched it repeatedly over and over again just for the funny scenes, which is like anytime Thor's involved.
Yeah, I agree. The Endgame, well, it seems like a long time ago now. And me and Matt were talking about it the other day, actually, because we took a little bit of a hiatus from the podcasting. There was a bit of a gap, probably four months or so. I had a newborn on the way, so didn't have the time to commit to it. So when we started back up again, and we seem to have, I certainly think, and it might be me being a bit arrogant with it, but I feel like we've actually got a lot better at it in the newer stuff that we've done. And we were putting together some of our old videos the other day to do a post for newer followers of our show, to check out some of our older videos. And it's funny the amount of what I think we must have done 3 or 4 episodes where there was spoilers for Endgame and all the different trailers that came out, and it seems like such a long time ago now, but yeah, I really enjoyed the film.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be? Because I've been thinking about this since I was a little kid. I've always was like, pray to God to get superpowers. I could have prayed for world peace. I could have prayed for anything, but I was like, I just want superpowers. Never fucking got them. But, you know, every birthday wish was, you know, I would just want superpowers. And I was trying to think of what would be the best power to get. And I feel like everyone wants to go with flight. Everyone wants to go with super strength. Everybody wants to go with, I like Wolverine's ability to be able to kind of regenerate, never die, unless you get like cancer. That movie Logan really kind of fucked me over. I was like sitting there, I was like, damn, so his cancer cells are growing faster than he can heal. So he's technically slowly dying. But I was like, but imagine being able to live for so long. But then I'm like, Looper
Mm.
or whatever that movie is, Jumper, where you could time travel, but like anywhere in the world. I was like, that'd be perfect. Like, you just want to change the scenery. You know, you're about to get in a car accident, just teleport out of the car.
Yeah. I mean, that was that film. I'm pretty sure that film never done as good as it probably should have done. Was that Bradley Cooper, or have I mixed that up with another one?
That's Limitless.
Different film.
That's where they take a
But
pill and it makes you freaking everything in the
who
world,
was
and it's
in
just
Looper
easier.
then, or Jumper?
Jumper's like, I think it is like a kind of like a UK style film, but the
Mm,
actor's from the UK, and
mm.
he's able to teleport anywhere by looking at like a picture, and he could teleport
Yeah,
to that place. And he started robbing banks. I was like,
good idea.
honestly, it's a good thing I don't have superpowers, because I'd probably be the first thing to be like, let me just get a bunch of money or get a bunch of tacos,
Yeah,
break into
yeah,
Taco Bell and start doing dumb shit.
yeah. Well, I'd have to go with. I mean, flying, like you say, it'd be a good one, but it's pretty basic. I'd probably go for something like invisibility.
Why
I'd quite like that.
invisibility?
Well, again, like you said, you could just go into anywhere. You could go and rob a bank if you want to. Not that I'm promoting robbing banks, but like you say, you could get yourself out of scenarios. You could, yeah,
Have you
just
ever seen the movie Mystery Men
no,
with
I
Ben
haven't.
Stiller?
No.
It's like a ragtag team of like really terrible superheroes, but the guy's like, I can only be invisible when no one's looking at me. And the guy's like, what? Like, and the whole time it's like this, like he's just keeps talking up, we need you. And then at the ending, there's like this camera that if you try and get through the security system, it'll freeze you or freeze you or turn you into stone. And everyone's like, how are we going
Right.
to get to, if the switch is on the other side, how are we going to get past it? The camera sees us. He goes, this is where I come in. So the dude takes all his clothes off and everybody looks away and he turns off the system. It really did become invisible when no one saw him. But it was like these stupid things, like the
Yeah,
one
yeah, yeah.
girl would carry a bowling ball. That was her dad. And you're like, wait, what do you mean? Her dad fell down an elevator shaft, was murdered, and he put his skull inside of the bowling ball, so you get to see this giant bowling ball skull. And she would throw it, and the thing would fly magically and just start knocking it. It was the
It
fucking.
sounds bizarre.
It's like Ben Stiller's movie of like an off-brand, like popular movie where you're like, how did this slip through? But I enjoy
Yeah.
every second of it. Like you
Oh,
come
I have to
across
check
it
that
when you're
out.
stoned at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, I have to check that out. There are a few that are like that are kind of really low budget films that just kind of draw you in time and time again once you've seen them. Um, yeah. I remember going to the cinema actually with friends when I was younger to see Road Trip, which
I
was a
don't know if I've
classic
seen it.
film if you've ever seen Road Trip,
I've never seen
which
it.
had it had what's his name? He was in American Pie, who played Stifler. I'm sure he was in it.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about.
Sean William Scott, is that his
Yeah,
name?
Sean William Scott. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he was in it. But Road Trip was, yeah, I remember going to the cinema to see it and thinking, I have no idea what this film is that I'm about to see. And the cinema was packed. And it was one of them ones where literally the whole audience was laughing all the way through it. And it was kind of like that kind of American Pie sort of
Is that where
genre of
the like
film.
the nerd guy from Delta Farce or whatever it is? He has sex with that one chick and he walks out and he's like super confident.
Yes, yeah,
Starts itching
he
his
has sex with a
crotch with
big.
his hat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah, and
that was that was the
It's so
funniest
funny,
shit
mate. Tom
out there.
Green was in it. I mean, that was when Tom Green was kind of a big deal, and he was hilarious in it. But yeah, such a great film. But again, low budget, wasn't really well. I wouldn't say advertised. Certainly not over here in the UK. But I remember going to see it, and I was like, I need to see this film again. But
I
again, I like them sort of films.
so all right. I like doing this as like kind of like a would you rather. So if you could become invisible, but you had to had something kind of happen where it's like it really kind of negates the benefits of having the superpower. So for invisible, it's only for 30 seconds.
Right,
So you can only become 30 seconds of invisible. And then there's like
invisible,
there's an hour period where you can't. So you have to figure out how to rob that bank in 30 seconds.
and
And
then
I look at that, like people are like, I want to be able to fly. And it's like, okay, imagine if you can only fly when you're inside. So then you're trying to fly and you just slam up into the roof of your house and like fall down. I'm like, there you go. It has to have that type of thing. I feel like is the only way. If you prayed for powers, God would be like, all right, I'll give you that, but you're gonna have this thing that goes with it. And then you're like, oh well, that
yeah,
just
yeah.
totally. I have to be in a coliseum to actually enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what was your choice for a superpower?
time travel, which would be like
Time travel.
jumping
So what?
anywhere, any location. I would be like, I can jump there, but then I have to wait a day. So there'd be a cool down period. So like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to teleport to Egypt. The next thing you know, you're like, I fucking hate it. It's hot. And it's like, you can't.
And I'm there for 24 hours. Yeah.
I feel like that's
Would
like,
you?
you look at all the travel magazines, you're like, that'd be an amazing place to visit. Then you go there, like, it's fucking hot. I'm sweaty. I'm thirsty. I don't know what to
Yeah.
do. And it's like,
It is hot as well. I've been to Egypt. It is boiling. And although I didn't go to see the pyramids or anything like that, I've got friends who have and went inside, and they said it is like being inside an oven. It is ridiculous.
I look at you ever seen the show Doom Patrol?
No.
So you know who Brendan Fraser is, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you've seen Teen Titans?
Yeah.
The cartoon, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Doom Patrol has a character. I don't know what his name is. I've really only seen trailers of it, but it's like a live action kind of Teen Titans version a little bit. But the Doom Patrol, everybody got their powers from something bad. And the guy, Brendan Fraser, who plays this giant like robot machine dude, he got into a NASCAR accident. And his whole body was just completely destroyed. And they put him in this like suit where he's like a giant furnace machine. Like, they actually had a starring in Teen Titans. I think it was called Doom Patrol. It was Beast Boy's old team.
Right.
But like, it was seeing that, like him freaking out, like, oh my God, but he's like super strong and he's just like this invincible machine and stuff. I'm like, would that be a cool way to get a power? Because like, if you look at the DC comics, everybody who has a superpower has got it through a very bad way or turned into a hero from like a tragic accident. Where if you look at Marvel, it's always been like, oh, he got bit by a spider, got fucking went from cameraman to Spider-Man.
Yeah. There is always a night. I think there's got to be though, hasn't there? There's got to be a backstory to it that adds a little bit of depth to the character. I think that's quite important with these. With Spider-Man, I mean, Spider-Man's awesome, but
which Spider-Man?
Well, I know who your favourite is because I've heard you mention it before on your show. But my favourite would have to be the current one.
Who do you think my favorite is?
Yours is Tobey Maguire, isn't it?
Good man. You know who I hate the most? Tom fucking Holland. I had somebody take a screenshot of my face during a podcast episode and mash it up next to Tom Holland's and put it on Twitter. And I mean, okay, so, all right, for people listening, this is like what I like to do the most is when somebody says, oh, I mean, I don't really see that you look like Tom Holland. I show them this photo, and you're about to hear his reaction as he sees this photo. So they mashed up my face, and if the computer can get it right.
I mean, mate, I can see it. That's the thing. I can see it.
That son of a bitch.
Apart from the stubble or the beard that you got going on,
that's
that
the
kind
difference.
of makes you look older than Tom Holland.
That's
so,
what I'm saying. I had some person go, you're 22. I'm like, yeah, I'm 22. They're like, you look like you're 10. I'm like, that's why I keep the fucking chin hair. It's not because I think it's manly. It's because I don't want to get carded everywhere I go.
Yeah. I actually, it's a bit controversial over here because I think a lot of friends of mine weren't massive Tobey Maguire fans of that Spider-Man. I think more so the later films. I think it went a little bit in a weird direction, but I thought Tobey Maguire was an awesome Spider-Man.
I think he did a great job at the fact that like he was like in his 30s and he made you believe he was in high school. Like he really captured that bullying kind of thing perfectly. But then everyone hated Spider-Man 3 so fucking much that it was like they just rushed it. I mean, people talk shit on my all-time favorite movie, which is Green Lantern. I love
Green Lantern.
Thank you. Somebody with class. That is amazing.
It might just be because it's Ryan Reynolds. I'm a massive fan of him. But I actually thought, watching that film back, I think I didn't watch that film straight away. I watched it probably a long way after it came out because of the reviews, like because everyone slated it so hard. I remember watching it one day and I thought, let's give it a go, see what you think. And when you watch it, like he's awesome. Like his powers are incredible. Like some of them scenes in that where he's got the fight scenes and it's just using his imagination to be creative as a superhero, essentially, to try and outwit his nemesis. Forgive me for not remembering all the characters' names, but I thought it was awesome.
The issue was the fact that they put what seemed like it should be two separate movies into one. The training should have
Right.
been a hell of a lot longer. They only had
Mm.
like a good 10 minutes of him using the ring, and then he immediately was like, going out there and fighting people. I was like, all right, come on. I wanted to focus more on that a little bit. Like, and everyone's like, oh, but like it's it's just too rushed. I was like, it's the only one though. Like, all these people for so many years that fucking hated superheroes, considered it nerd culture. Now everybody has an opinion of like, oh, they did that movie terrible. They should have did it like this. I'm like, you
Yeah.
just became a fan. What about the
Yeah.
guys that have been reading the comic books, like uh, Tom Toomey, who does comics? He owns a comic store and collects comics and studies the history behind it. I had him on here, and he was telling me, he was like, "Yeah, this wasn't a thing when I was a kid. Like everyone, like you had to put this stuff in secret. Like your parents would give you money, and
Mm.
you had to hide that you were a D&D fan or a comic book nerd." I'm like, "Fuck, it's." Everyone wants to be Superman. Now everybody wants to be The Rock. I'm like, I'd rather be Superman because he can change in a phone booth. I just wish he wouldn't fuck it up every time. Because like, imagine being the guy walking up to the phone booth, like, I wait for this guy to get out of here. The thing explodes. You're like, well, the next one's 2 miles away. My wife is giving labor right now.
Yeah. I agree though. Like, it's weird. I had a conversation like this. If you check out our most recent podcast that we've done, we had a good friend of mine, a friend who I grew up with, who has only within the last kind
He
of
draws his
12
own
to 18 months,
comics.
he's done his own comic.
I
Yeah.
listened. I see. I did my research.
Good man. Well, I definitely recommend getting him on for a chat because he's a great chap for all that sort of stuff. And the Secret Protectors, which is his own comic, which he's done all the writing for. Yeah, it's incredible. And again, the backstories. He's invested a lot of time into it. And like you say, when you're younger, I mean, I'm 34 now, so I'm probably now encouraging my son to think about superheroes more than I want to be one now. But yeah, it was everything you wanted to be, and there was such a variety. I remember watching kind of X-Men and Spider-Man even, and yeah, all the different superheroes there. But I think they're a different level now, and certainly as an adult watching it. To when you was a kid, you need, I think, as an adult, you need that backstory. As a kid, you just wanted to know what their superpower was.
Well, back in the day, the superheroes were like, they had a power, and then they weren't really seen as like this unstoppable force besides like some superheroes, but they ended up getting defeated. But then you look at
Mm.
like, you ever seen X-Men Apocalypse?
Yeah.
One of my favorites because of the fact like Quicksilver's in there and like he's saving everybody
Yeah.
from the house and it's playing "Sweet Dreams Are Made of It." Like that's
It's
amazing. But
great.
you look at that enemy that they had. Fuck, I don't know what I would do if I would put in that scenario where I had to fight this guy.
Mm.
But like he just put that guy into a wall. Like
Mm.
a wall. I can handle the guy with super strength. I can just stay away from him, make sure he doesn't hit me. But that guy
Yeah.
just made that dude sunk into the floor. I don't know if I like this. And then at the ending where he's getting hit with all those metal shards and stuff where everybody's teaming up against him, one goes straight into his dick. Didn't even flinch. Didn't. I had to rewind it. I was like, hold on a second. That went from a diagonal all the way in through the crotch bone. I was like, he didn't even flinch at that. And he just looked up at her like, this is it for me. I'm like, what about your dick, bro? Like, that's like, I had so many questions, which is why I feel like I was best to see Endgame at my house because I had to pause it and be like, hang on a second, hang on. Did he just say that? Like, did anybody, like, I'm that guy in the movie theater. It's like, anybody else see this shit? Anybody?
Yeah. That was, I mean, the X-Men films are another one, aren't they? That are a little bit kind of. I've actually enjoyed them, but I know again a lot of people who haven't. Again, I think they went off in a different direction. They kind of brought it back around again. I think with was it Days of Future Past? Was that one of their?
Days of Future Past was one, but the one everybody gave shit for was the Rising Phoenix or whatever the one
Yes,
was.
that was it. Yeah, the Rising Phoenix, which I feel like they've done that storyline probably 2 or 3 times as well. I think on one of the earlier X-Men movies, wasn't there one where she kind of alluded to that character before? It's Jane Grey, isn't it, who
Yeah.
becomes the Phoenix? Yeah. So, and Wolverine kind of was the one that stopped it there, and then you had it all came back round again. So I think they've done a bit of a reboot with that anyway, didn't they? But
well, even if you look at like, okay, would you rather be a superhero or a supervillain?
good question. The super villains seem to have more fun.
Because you don't have to worry about anybody. You can literally
Yeah,
like, I'm gonna blow this place up and not have to worry about a soul. But if you're a superhero, like I gotta
yeah.
save everyone in this building. I'm like, can I get a Marvel movie or something where they don't save everybody? Because I feel like that was what X-Men with Apocalypse, where he didn't get to save the dude's brother. It was like,
Mm,
thank you, showing some realness. Because if I had that superpower, I would probably forget so much shit. Like he was going in there and getting everything done. He got the people on the roof, got people
mm.
in the basement. I was like, what happens if there was a dude taking a shit in the bathroom? How are you gonna go in there and be able to super speed him out of there? Because you got to pull up his pants and everything. I'll be like, I just gotta leave you, bro, and then just run over to the next room. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, again, you touch upon a point there where it is that kind of the expectation is that the good guys always win or the heroes always come and save the day. Where I think if you look at something like Endgame, or sorry, Infinity Wars before that, where Thanos clicks his fingers and then all your half the bunch of the heroes all disintegrated into dust, and that was the end of the film, and you were just like, shit, that's it. They're gone. You knew obviously something was going to happen for Endgame. I mean, the way they went about it was all kind of a bit mad, but certainly from Infinity War, that was mad when you're losing half the cast essentially.
Yeah, if you look at Endgame, for instance, like that was a basic foreshadow of coronavirus. Like when everybody when it was first coming out, everybody was like, half the people we know are going to die. Like that's what it seemed like, the snap of the fingers that
Yeah,
like we're just gonna lose. And then we realized it was nothing like that. It was more like X-Men. Some people got sick, and then there was a thing that came out. That's
yeah,
kind of how
exactly.
how it led into. But I look at like, if you're rather going to get your superpowers based on money, or if you got your superpowers off of a tragic accident, I think I would go with the accident if I didn't know it was coming. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like if it just like hit me out of nowhere. Like there used to be a really good superhero show called Static Shock. Have you ever heard of it?
No, not heard of that.
So the reason why I like the Green Lantern so much was not only because of the powers that he has, but he was literally the only black superhero.
Right.
So at least at the time, during
Mhm.
Justice League and all that, and they kind of
Mhm.
switched it over and made Ryan Reynolds it. But Static Shock was a kid that had electricity powers from like a snowstorm. But
Mhm.
he was a young black kid in school. Going to school every day. He got to see that, just like kind of Peter Parker was. And then he got hit by a snowstorm, and he had like electricity powers, and he flew on a sewer grate. That was his ride. He would get the electricity, pull it up off the ground, and be able to fly on top of it. But it was like Static Shock, and it was like this whole hip trendy thing. I'm like, bring that guy back. His costume was amazing. He had a white little like visor on his eyes. He had this like purple yellow jacket, Lakers colors, and was all like completely different. And it was like, that was what I look back at all the superhero movies that have been out, and I look at the ones that they could have done, the superheroes they could have picked. Have you
Mm.
thought of any other superheroes that should get a movie that really
Well,
haven't got a chance?
well, one that got rumored for years, which was one of my favorite characters when I was younger, was Gambit, and they
Mm-hmm.
always talked about doing a Gambit film. Um, I'm sure he had a bit of a cameo in one of the earlier X-Men
The
movies.
Wolverine movie, one of my favorite ones. They that's what brought the idea of let's get Gambit a movie because of
Yeah,
how much he played a role in that movie.
but it never got the traction. There was always talk about it, and you'd read kind of on the dirt sheets about it potentially coming out, but you'd never actually. It never came to fruition. I don't know whether it's too far gone now, but saying that, they seem to be going down a bit of a history line with other kind of stories. We're bringing other old characters back. There's talk about is the Rock. He's going to be playing one, I think, soon. I want to say Black Adam, but I might be wrong.
I know the Shazam movie was freaking brilliant.
Shazam, that's a mad one. That is because again, from seeing the trailer for that, I I wasn't blown away by it. I was thinking this is really kind of a bit of a comedy one. But when you watch it, it's pretty deep in places as well. It's pretty kind of touching. But the film itself is brilliant. My friend Matt, who I do the show with, he got it and lent it to me. Yeah, great film.
What I think I love about I think why people love the new Spider-Man is because it's the kid. It's like having that comedy side and that fun side and being a
Mm,
superhero. That's what Shazam was. You look
yeah.
at like all the other superheroes that are like, I'm Batman. And it's like I was You know, like all this like dark and freaking, I have to be like a silent and be like so macho and all this type of stuff. And then Shazam's like, he's coming out of a liquor store with Slurpees and stuff like, thank you, have a nice night. Like he's still a kid. So it gave you that fun, entertaining perspective where people could laugh more. I'm like,
yeah.
So many movies end up going like, you know, if you want to look at all of the DC movies, like the Joker, for instance, that was crazy as hell. And I'm talking about the Dark Knight, not the newest one. But then it kind of took a different perspective. Like I'm a big fan of the Dark Knight. I think Heath Ledger is probably my favorite Joker. I've never seen the newest one, but from what I've seen from like little clips and bits, it is really a lot about the mental health side of it, which is definitely a better twist on a lot of things, making it a little bit more serious in their filmmaking compared to Marvel, where it's got to be like a joke every 5 seconds.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. The Dark Knight is probably one of my all-time favourite trilogies. I think the casting in it was brilliant. You know, probably my favourite Batman, definitely. The Joker, like you say, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I've seen the newest version of the Joker, and I thought that was really good. And if you liked the psychology of Heath Ledger's version, I mean, there's the personal story for Heath Ledger with that getting into character, obviously, is crazy mad anyway. But the new one with Joaquin Phoenix, I think is equally. It's a different take on it, but it's more of an origin story, which I liked. And again, because it's kind of, it is dark, it is gritty. There's a lot of layers to his character, which I think they build really well into it, which we probably didn't see because Heath Ledger just came in straight away. He was the Joker. And you saw what I liked about that one, and I think Matt mentioned it on our show, is that he had little snippets of, do you want to know how I got my scars? Or, you know, do you want to know how I got my smile and all that? And he changed the story every time. So you never really knew how he got it. It was different stories every time. So, yeah, I think there's two sides of it. I think you've got them ones where the characters are there's a darker story behind them, and they can't really afford to be jokey. And it would have ruined it, I think, if in that respect, if Heath Ledger or Joaquin Phoenix had been jokey. And one of my complaints with Endgame was that I felt like Marvel tried to put too many jokes in where they weren't needed. You know, you just lost half your friends or family or whatever from the film before, and then in the next one it's all a little bit too corny in places, which I wasn't a fan of.
I feel like if superheroes and all this were real, it would be like more like the movie Watchmen.
Yeah, great film.
Maybe not having the giant blue guy who's naked everywhere, just refuses to wear
just
clothes.
Distracting everyone.
That's what I do, honestly. If I had his powers, I'd just go to Mars and be naked, honestly. I feel like just start building random shit. Like it's like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where he's like, I'm going to start building some weird ass shit. I was like, don't give me any of the powers to like be able to make buildings out of thin air or something. But The Watchmen was like so interesting because it was a very dark fucking movie. I watched it when I was 14 years old with my family. And then the nude scenes came up and your mom's like, shield your eyes. And you're just like looking through the cracks of your fingers or whatever. And my dad's like, great movie, Robbie. Great movie pick. And I was like, I didn't know. I just saw the trailer of superheroes and I thought it was going to be like a Marvel movie, not tits and dicks and all this other stuff popping up.
Yeah.
But it kind of showed a perspective, like the smiling guy, the comedian. You know, he was an alcoholic. He didn't give a fuck. I was like, you have to think with all that power and comes great responsibility, there's got to be some dark shit to it. Like, that's why they always say, like, when they did the Superman versus Batman, like Superman went crazy or something, because I'm like, you got to think he's saving the world constantly and he messes up one time. People give you all the shit for that one slip up, and out of the million times you save them.
What did you think of Batman versus Superman? Because again, it's one
I saw bits and pieces. Everyone gives shit on Ben Affleck, but I'm like, what the fuck do you want? Like, first of all, Chris Evans to me is Human fucking Torch. I don't care how long you put him as Captain America, he's always gonna be Human Torch. So when I see Ben Affleck, I'm like, it's Christian Bale's the real Batman. You're just putting another guy in the spot. So it's like that was their first slip up, and then it seemed like how are you going to put up these two together and then make this fight scene? But it happened in the comics. So like, I'm sure at one point we'll see Wolverine go against the Incredible Hulk, because that happened in the comic too. And then Deadpool came in and completely fucking blew everything out of the water. Everybody was like, whoa, the fourth wall can break. And when that movie first came out, I watched that a billion times. Even the second one I thought was good.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I love Deadpool. And again, it was I think we'd had obviously Guardians. I love Guardians of the Galaxy because of the comedy element of that, but it fits with them and the characters in it. I mean, like Drax just cracks me up, with his little snippets of comedy that he has in there. And then going on to Deadpool, like the comedy throughout, and like you say, breaking the fourth wall, it was new to that scene of movies. When you've got all the other ones going on at the same time around, and then you've got Deadpool just kind of talking to the camera, cracking jokes and making dick jokes with other characters. It's just, it was brilliant.
And he farts and goes drive-by the blind. Like, this is priceless. Surprisingly, like, you look at how the culture's kind of shifted in a way too. I'm like, is it that difficult to start making your own superheroes now? I'm like, I feel like with the amount of creativity and people kind of learning to dive more into this, like, people can think of anybody can really be a superhero. I mean, they have dudes on there that can like throw forks and stuff. Like, okay, that's another thing of Mystery Men. One of the guys on there is he can bend forks. Or no, is it forks or spoons? He can like bend it with his mind. And they're like, you couldn't pick another weapon? Like, you can't throw knives? He goes, no, I can only throw spoons. It's like, what the fuck? Like, how is that going to help us? But I was like, that's what it would be if we got superpowers. It would be this, but it's slightly above average, but it's not like the most amazing thing in the world. And then there's like the one major superhero guy who has like all the powers, like everything. He's invincible and he always saves the day. Ends up getting melted into a pile of goo. So these others got to step up. And it's like, that would be me. Like, Ben Stiller's character only gets super strong when he gets really angry, and he's not really super strong. He's just above average.
Yeah. I think it's funny, isn't it? Like you say, you can be creative with it, and everyone could have their own idea as long as they're thinking outside the box and making it original. Because there are too many kind of ones where you'll watch it and you'll go, well, that's just a rip-off of Superman or Spider-Man or whatever. But if you're adding a comedy element to it where you can be a bit stupid with it as well, that makes it more enjoyable, I think.
It makes me think of like how far with like technology will society go to the point where we start getting like mutations and stuff. Like 5G, is that doing anything to anybody that we know of? Like, I mean, is that maybe causing a mutation? But also, like, people are talking about injecting like a gene chip into their back of their head so they can have internet and all this other type of crap. I'm like, how long until it becomes like Sky High, where we end up having like superheroes and non-superheroes, where superheroes have to go to a whole different school? But then I look at that, I'm like, I would be the guy that would have the what's your power? I glow in the dark. What the fuck do you mean you glow in the dark? Have you ever seen Sky High?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Where they're testing the superpowers, and the one guy goes, car, and he drops a car, and dude turns to a giant rock and freaking catches it like, Big Larry. Yeah. And then the one dude's like, what do you do? He goes, I glow. He goes, what do you mean you glow? And he goes, just shut the lights off, and you'll see. And he turns into like a sidekick. Like, there's classes of heroes and sidekicks. And the one dude, Coach Boomer, has the freaking mega voice where he can just yell at you and a sonic wave comes out and throws you back. That'd be a good superpower too, but imagine if it hurts your voice every time. So then eventually you develop throat cancer. And that's how you would get your powers. There would always be that little in the details. You got to read that shit.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to like we've touched on it earlier, but you've got to have some sort of, it can't just be a free-for-all. Like, everyone's got a weakness or something. Superman's got kryptonite, do you know what I mean? So, although I'm trying to think what Spider-Man's are off the top of my head.
He's a kid.
Other than him being a kid, yeah, but he hasn't got mortal. Any. Yeah, I guess.
Nobody's ever tried to shoot Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Or at least just walk up with a gun when he's Tom Holland and be like, hey, you don't have your Spider-Man suit on.
Do you think that there's something I've always thought about with you saying about that, with just shooting someone like that, like James Bond? I don't know if you're a Bond fan. I'm not a massive Bond fan. I'll watch them, but
I'm Bond. James Bond.
James Bond.
Octopussy. The best title for a movie that could not be
it
made
is
today.
awesome. But I always think like, surely someone's got to shoot this guy. Like, there's got to be one film where you start it and he gets shot and you're like, oh, he's dead. Do you know what I mean? Like,
It's a faster movie.
it is a faster movie, but these bad guys have got to be really bad because he's been going a long time now and he's still not been shot. Well, I think he has been shot, but not been killed.
It's what I love about The Dark Knight so much is that first 15 minutes is a fucking bank heist. People are getting shot left and right. And it's like every movie always starts off and you always know the ending. You can always predict it. He's the main character. He's never going to die. That's what I loved about like The Walking Dead for a little while was they could just kill off the main character like that. And then you were like, what? Like, how does this happen? Like, so many movies, and I get that's the whole point of the movie. Like, you don't expect the main guy to die because it's all about him. The fucking title's named after him. We got shirts, we got merch, we got inflatable dolls so you can have sex with because it's after Ryan Reynolds. But it's like, at the same time, you still want to see that, like, loss. You want to see that thing. And what I really loved about Deadpool was they gave one of my all-time favorite superheroes also, besides Wolverine, was Colossus. I mean, he needs his own movie. That was – he's a German, basically like power lifter sized guy that can turn into steel. I'm like any movie you ever see him, it's like slight mentions, and they actually did him right in Deadpool, and they cracked a lot of dick jokes with it too. But like, it's really hard to, like, when you start a superhero movie because you always know how it's going to end. I just want something to leave you with like, holy shit, did that just happen? And then it leads into a second one. Like all the sequels or all the things after that, we get it. They got this obstacle they got to get across. It's the same thing with every zombie movie. All right. They got to learn how to survive. Oh, what's on this episode? They got to go to the store and get supplies. Someone might die. It's like, let's make it to where you're never going to guess what the ending's going to be.
I think the difference there is the difference between a TV series, like you mentioned there, The Walking Dead, not one that I've watched, but friends of mine who are massive fans of it. But a TV series can do that because you'll have a bigger ensemble cast. You've got more time to go through it, and then you'll tend to, it's usually the end of a series will drop a nugget that just explodes into. I mean, my favourite one of all time was Lost, and you lost characters. No pun intended, but you did characters would be killed off or go missing or whatever, and you'd be like, shit, like we've just lost whoever. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you've traveled, so have you ever thought about what would happen if they were in a plane crash?
No.
Really?
I don't want. Well, I mean, it's.
I've thought about it way too many times. Like every time I fly, I'm like, what happens if this plane crashes and who's going to survive? And it only takes 7 days till you decide to eat somebody. Like 7 days of not eating, you start. I mean, come on. As guys, it's an initial thing in our mind that when another dude walks into a room, we size them up and we wonder if we could take them in a fight. It's a quick couple minutes that you think that. This whole time I've been looking at you like, okay, he seems like I could go for like a shoulder jab or do something where I could get him in the throat and get. I know James Bond style, but like, no, it leads down to is like, what am I going to do to survive? And then that breaks down at 7 days, that love, that faith that ends up going down there. And it's a good thing with The Gray. If you've ever seen that with Liam Neeson.
Yeah. Really good.
Where everybody's being hunted and slowly, like they were fighting against each other, not even in like a day after the plane crash happened, this tragic incident. And it's all about like, who's the alpha, who's this, how are we going to survive? And then you start going into the initial survival instincts of trying to save yourself rather than save other people around you. And that's when you get to see people step up. To me, that's a superhero movie because that guy stepped up to freaking save everybody else from this plane crash or these coordinates.
I mean, it's not something I've necessarily thought about because you obviously don't want it to happen. But in that scenario, it is just about surviving, isn't it? And trying to, I don't know whether I would necessarily be the leader, but I'd certainly want my voice to be heard on how we could survive or how we can get out of whatever situation we're in.
You're telling me you've never wanted a plane crash to happen?
What, me be on a plane crash to happen?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like on a plane and there's like a crying baby. I'm like, I hope this motherfucker goes down. That always brings me like some type of like safety though. When I hear a crying baby on there, I'm like, the plane couldn't go down. God wouldn't take away a fresh soul. Even though I'm not like really religious at all, I just have that perspective. Like it keeps me safe. Like I remember I got sat on the back of the airplane one time and I went to go put my stuff above the storage container, and there was oxygen tanks up there. And I was like, where am I going to put my stuff? She goes, oh, sorry. And I was like, why are there oxygen tanks up here? What happens if this thing explodes? And she goes, oh, it's pumping oxygen through the plane. And I was like, oh my God, like it's not coming in through the windows. And I was like 15 when I figured this out. So I was like, it's not coming in through the windows. So we're just surviving off these things. What happens if it runs out of air? She goes, we won't run out of air. I was like, what happens if it does or it explodes? I'm right up under it. And she goes, why are you thinking like that? I'm like, I watch a lot of fucking Final Destination movies and I want to know I'm going to be okay. If I get scared, can I open up that door? She goes, that takes a couple 1,000 pounds of pressure. And then like the next flight I was on, I sat next to one of the emergency doors and they ask you that fucking question. Are you going to be able to help out in an emergency situation? I'm 15 years old. I'm like, what? Do you feel comfortable? Would you like to switch seats with someone? Who the fuck wants to switch? Who wants to switch? I am not comfortable with saving everybody in this. I'm the first one out. Nah, I'll probably help out a little bit. Probably if the plane crashes, I'm going for the peanut cart because every time it gets to me, she's like, do you want chicken or fish? I'm like, I'll take the fish. We're out of fish. I'll take the chicken. We're out of chicken. What do I get? Fucking peanuts. I'm like, thanks.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for nothing. Yeah.
Sustenance.
The funny thing about the emergency exits now, that's kind of what everyone wants, isn't it? Because of the extra leg room or whatever that you get with it. But there is
not if you have to save everybody on the airplane.
you know the saying: extra leg room, extra responsibility. It's just like being a superhero. So it's just the famous saying.
That hits on so many levels. Mostly before they had the reclining seats. I don't know if it's like that in the UK for you in the movie theaters, yeah. The reclining seats. Back in the day when there were the normal ones, there was the handicap ones. And me and my grandpa would always go in there and try and get the handicap ones. I'm like, but we're not handicapped. He goes, I can fake a limp. I'm like, okay. All right. It's like, yeah, extra responsibility comes with that, I guess.
That's it.
Okay. Have you felt like we touched on a lot of different things? Is there anything you wanted to specifically talk about?
No, that's cool, man. I've really enjoyed it. How long have we been on for?
Almost an hour.
Oh, yeah. That's been good. I've really enjoyed it.
You know your name's like a porn star.
I hope so.
It goes down to another Ben Stiller movie. Freaking
It is the Blue Steel. Yeah, I've got that a lot.
What would you say is the most beneficial thing you learned doing the podcast with your friend?
Not too beneficial. Is to be more confident, I would say. I wouldn't necessarily say this is something I would have even thought about doing years ago. I mean, and
yeah, it took forever for you to get me a DM back. I'm like, Jesus.
Well, it's Matt. I'm actually working this week, and Matt's off. So originally, I was going to persuade Matt to do it, but he's off on annual leave. So I said I would happily do it in my break. So it's been really enjoyable. But yeah, going back to it, the whole putting my friend, many years ago to do a podcast was because I probably wasn't as confident enough to do it. But then being on his show and then me and Matt doing our show, it's kind of, yeah, I feel like it is just you're chatting with your mate, really. Whoever listens to it, and I hope they enjoy it. That's the main thing. And I'm sure it's same for you. It's just shooting the breeze and having a chat and finding out about people and learning their stories, I guess.
Is there any topics that you've covered that you really enjoy talking about, like you try and steer sometimes, or is it just random every time? And then is there one that you don't want to talk about ever? I feel like coronavirus for me is getting pretty, like every podcast it gets brought up. I'm like, there's so many fucking people talking about it, but then you realize it's going to be a part of our history forever.
It is, yeah. But again, we try not to go into things that are a little bit too heavy or too, like you say, we definitely don't go into kind of political chat. That's not our grounds for discussion. We do that between us at work or whatever, but it's not really something that we think is an enjoyable thing. It's a debatable topic over here. But politics is something that's probably caused more wedges between friends.
It always turns into a fucking argument. Like,
it
just
does, yeah,
talk
exactly.
about it.
Exactly. And I think what we try to do is talk about stuff. We have guests on from time to time. One of my best mates, he's been on a few times, and we have a laugh with him. We've got a whole segment which is called Question Mark. If you've heard that part, which is funny because me and him will have many an argument over certain topics, and that's why we've got his questions coming into us usually to have a debate. We had a debate over a Netflix show about what was it called? Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix, and it was all about these people talking about an alien sighting many years ago in I think it was in Massachusetts or something like that, and there was 5 or 6 different people that all saw this same UFO sighting, and some of them claimed to have been teleported up to the spaceship. There
Fuck,
was
dude. I need to get one of those guys on my podcast. I've tried so hard, but it's like, have you really?
exactly. Well, this is the thing, and the show's called Unsolved Mysteries. So you get to the end of it, there's no proof that they actually were.
It's X-Files, and
Other than
nothing gets
exactly.
solved.
So we had debates with my friend Mark about that on the show. But Gary, I mean, what do we enjoy talking about most? I don't know. It's probably techie sort of stuff. You know, we do talk about tech, but I mean, my biggest passion is football. And Matt isn't really a sports guy, so we never really get to talk about that. Maybe one day I'll start my own football podcast.
Back to wrestling and also
Mm,
soccer
yeah.
or football in your instance. Do you think that they fake it up sometimes when they fall and they're like acting like they're really hurt, but they're really not? Like you see them playing like the next round
Are we talking about on soccer?
on football, yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's certain players who have reputations for doing that. That's the thing. And as a fan, if they're one of your players, you're just urging them to stop making a fool out of themselves.
Well, the thing about wrestling is like when you're a kid, you love it, and then you find out it's not real. And then there's like this years where you just don't enjoy it. And then when you get older and you're like an adult, you start realizing the amount of effort it goes behind it to create those scenes, the choreography and stuff. And like you start to actually respect it a little bit. It's the
Yeah.
same thing kind of with soccer though, but like you don't respect the whole like people will just like sit there and act like they're severely hurt, then hop in like a minute later. Like that's the one thing I always got about soccer. I'm like, the dude didn't even touch him. Like it's a lot in
Mm.
basketball you see too. Someone will go shoot a shot. One dude will act like he got pushed down and fall on the ground like, what the fuck? And it's like, okay, he didn't even touch you. Like you can watch it in the camera, play it back. They weren't even close to each other. And it's like, man, that really does the sport a disservice, man. Because like you just want to sit there and actually watch a gameplay. And like with everything going on now, we're not going to see sports probably for a little while, or it's going to be completely different.
Yeah, and it is over here, yeah, especially without the crowd. But I completely agree. I think footballers, they're yeah, it's hard to have any sort of sympathy for them when I mean, not that I'm a massive fan of it, but rugby over here or American football over there. I mean, I know American footballers have all the kind of padding and all that, but when you watch rugby players like in a scrum where they're kind of bumping into each other and it's the tackles in that, it's and they'll literally be treated on the pitch while the game is carrying on around in rugby. And in football, the ref's got to blow the whistle and everything stops, and you go and treat this guy who's back up on his feet in 2 seconds and then kicking the ball about like he's clearly not hurt. So
I
yeah,
respect
they're a little
rugby
bit.
because I think that honestly, if we had less padding in the NFL, people are like, well, then you get hurt more. I'm like, no, you would learn to not rely so much on the equipment when you hit somebody.
Yeah.
I think everybody's thinking in the mindset, I'm so padded up, I can barely feel anything. Well, if you go like Ed Reed, for instance, is one of the, I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, but at the same time, he did a lot of shit where it was like, damn, like he got in trouble, so many fines, so many penalties, because what he would do is he would drop and go head first into the guy and go helmet to helmet. And when you're doing that, when somebody's not really moving or somebody's not expecting it,
So
you're going to hurt
on the
that
neck,
guy. Yeah.
yeah.
So I was like, if you go back to rugby where like there's not that many pads and the helmet and stuff, it might for like the first couple of weeks be a lot of injuries, but then people would learn like, oh shit, I can't hit you because I'm actually going to hurt myself in this too. It's like when you headbutt somebody, you're like, fuck, like that. Nobody ever
Yeah.
really wins with a headbutt,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really strange to kind of see every single sport and really kind of see what's kind of different about it and then like what they could change on it. I always like looking at that perspective of stuff. But like soccer, for instance, the whole faking an injury or doing that just for like a little bit of attention or for like a penalty or kick or be able to do whatever. It's the same thing when you see a kid fall and then it's a bad fall. Like, holy shit, he just slammed his head on the coffee table and you don't hear any crying, but they look around for you. They look around, and then when they see and they make eye contact with you is when you go, It's like, oh shit, like they just want the attention. Like I played soccer for a hot minute. I was a goalie. I was always getting my hands stepped on with cleats. I mean, getting people would kick and I get jammed fingers all the time from them kicking into my fingers because gives a fuck if you're reaching down for the ball, they're gonna kick it anyway. And I couldn't do anything about that. I couldn't be like, oh, it hurt. I just kind of had to, strengthen up to it and deal with it. And then I remember I got hit in the nuts with a soccer ball almost point blank by like one of the best kickers on the whole entire team. And everyone saw that and the whole crowd goes, huh! Like literally did the huh for me.
Yeah.
And like I stood up and like I was okay. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I'm all right now. And I took a step and then that's when all the pain shot into me. And I like just fell on the ground like, oh my God. And my dad's like, oh, got to take him to the hospital now. But like, I was talking to him about that. He goes, did you do it because the audience was kind of looking at you like, wow, like this kid's got to be severely hurt? I was like, no, just all the pain shot into me at that last, like when I took that step, it's like the perfect nut slide where it was like,
yeah.
And he goes, yeah, so you're playing soccer tomorrow? I'm like, I'm not fucking playing soccer anymore, man. That's over for me.
It's funny because you still see that in the games now, and even the commentators in the UK will mention it. Like he caught one in the sore ones there, or it's still probably one of the most painful things, other than a leg break or something like that. But yeah, and going back to the reaction thing, like you say, I've got a little boy who's coming up for 4 now, and if he ever has a fall or anything, it is that as a parent you're like, God, Jesus, he just hit his head on the door or on the table or whatever, and then again in wrestling, even now as an adult, like you say, I again have phased out of wrestling after probably in my teens somewhere, after enjoying the whole Hulk Hogan and them sort of Undertaker when back in the day.
Oh yeah,
Macho Man, and yeah. So nowadays you can appreciate it more them as athletes, and I think they are more athletic now. But even now, when you watch it, there's some where they'll take bumps, and you'll see it, and you'll go, Jesus, that must have. Although they're carrying on because that's what they're trained to do anyway. There's some where you're like, Jesus God, that must have really hurt. Like the landing wasn't great, or they landed on their neck, or whatever. It's the reaction's still there now.
Which is weird to see, like, if you look at WWE, how big that was, and then MMA kind of sparked in like popularity with like, oh, we can actually see the real thing happen. And then like Ronda Rousey was this talked about walk of the town, and then she got lost, and then next thing you know, nobody wanted to talk about her. Everybody made fun of her crying and all this stuff and all the memes that got put up about her. Then she went to WWE, and then I'm like, wow, what must it be like to be a MMA fighter where the shit's real? Like when Brock Lesnar was involved in UFC, and then he went to wrestling, or no, he went from wrestling to UFC. And in the first part of, I think, the 2009 game of UFC for like Xbox, there's like a little clip scenario of him training, and he runs at some dude, and some dude knees him in the face, and he falls down and hits the mat, and then like the camera goes up to his face. He goes, not like wrestling. This is real. And it's like that kind of perspective. Like, is it funnier to watch it knowing that it's fake because you get to see all the crazy stuff they're doing, or is it more enticing to watch because you know it's actually happening? It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I enjoyed it when I was younger, I would say, for the storylines, because it was like watching a TV show, except you had men or women in a ring wrestling to fight out their battles, their beef or whatever. Whereas now, I'd say it is more what more can we do to make this more exciting? If back in the day, you had obviously there's a match between The Undertaker and Mankind, Mick Foley, who they had a cage match with the first ever Hell in the Cell. Well, it wasn't the first ever Hell in the Cell, I think, but it was a cage over the ring, and then you had Undertaker throw Mick Foley off the top of this like 20-foot cage, and then he landed through one of the commentary tables, and you were just like, Jesus Christ, is he still alive from this? And now, even now, you see things where you'll think, how can they make it? And wrestlers will always try and go a bit more to be more impactful or jaw-dropping as such. I think it's difficult for them at the moment where there's no audience in the arenas. They're doing it all from the performance center at the moment, so it's very difficult to to have that unless you're the viewer watching at home. And I think it takes away an element of it. I've certainly not enjoyed watching any of it, and I don't watch it as much as I used to. But without there being that crowd to add an atmosphere to it, and it's the same in football as well. Football without an audience, I think, adds another element to it. But like you say, it's the moments. I remember Brock. You mentioned Brock there. I remember him in his earlier days in WWE where he attempted to do a backflip from the top rope onto another wrestler, and he completely mistimed it, landed like on the top of his head, and you just instantly fall. And you watch it now and you think, he's broke his neck. He could have paralysed himself. And that would have been his career over. And he somehow managed to. I mean, the geezer's built like an absolute shed, but he's
the craziest thing I've ever heard was in a podcast. A guy who did the WWE like fake wrestling stuff was talking about all like the fun and how it's like all this like fake kind of drama, like reality television type. And they talked about the one wrestler that jumped off I think like one of like the tall parts of like the building or something, like from the roof, and he missed and he actually died in the ring. So a long time ago, like when it was first starting out, it was a big thing. I'll have to look it up for sure. There's probably someone that's listening that's like, that's this thing. That's this thing.
I know. I remember Owen Hart. I don't know if you know that name.
It might be him, but the dude was talking from a perspective of someone that knew that guy and had watched that match happen.
Right.
And to see like as soon as he hit the ground and he wasn't moving, and then all the people started running in there like, oh shit, like he's actually really hurt. Like to hear that, it's like you people don't know what these guys go through. That's where I respect it. Is like still fucking. It might be fake, but it's still like a really really hard. Like when you see people do like they pick the guy up, they do like the pile driver or the screwdriver, whatever. They hit their head into the mat, even though they have the knees there and it hits that, and then their head doesn't really hit the ground, but they just let them go. It's like you still have to respect that person's not actually gonna fucking let your head slam into the thing and crack your spinal cord. Like that just gets me. I'm like, gotta respect the game and respect the hustle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the one you're talking about was Owen Hart, which was during a live show. He's the plan was that he was going to enter the ring on a zip line, and there was some changes made to the company that WWE used, which they used all the time. He's done this entrance before, but they changed the company and they reckon there was something dodgy about them. There's a lot of conspiracy behind it, but basically his plan was to zip line into the ring, and it broke and he fell, landed in the ring and died. I don't know if it was instant, but the worst thing about it was that obviously this was on a live pay-per-view, and they were basically told, the commentary team were told, because they cut the cameras so you couldn't see what was going on, but they were told to carry on. And that's one of their friends in the ring, essentially, one of their colleagues. And they were told to carry on doing what they're doing. And then the next match happened, and they said that was one of the darkest things I think that's ever happened in WWE, where someone's just essentially died in the ring and you're now carrying on the broadcast. And I know they say the show must go on, but there's
one kid out there like best $6.99 I have ever spent in my entire life. Like that's, if you really look it down to why people enjoy so much, is you like to watch somebody get hurt. It's the reason why you watch NASCAR or something. You want to see a car crash. I mean, even after 100 something laps, where I'm like, I don't want to go out there and say it, but is anybody else waiting for a crash to happen? And it's like you go a whole NASCAR, which never happens without one accident happening or something. You're like, I just feel dissatisfied. It's not like you want to see somebody die or get hurt, but you want to see like this crazy thing happen. It's all from, I don't know if you had it over there, but America's Funniest Videos with Bob Saget. Did you have anything like that where they showed like funny?
We've got things like that. Yeah.
That's where it all starts, is you want to watch somebody get hit in the nuts, but it's like, it's practical, not, like Jackass. Like that was only crazy because that took it to a whole new level. Like, let's watch people physically fucking hurt themselves and laugh at it. And they were doing some stuff on there where I was like, that's not funny. That's actually looks severely painful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Jackass was of its time, I think. I remember being in school watching it, and there was guys who I was in school with who tried to create their own version of it.
Everybody did.
It was just like, I didn't personally get involved in it, but it was it was, if that's what you want to do and potentially come out of it with some sort of injury. But like you say, I think the further that went on, there was ones where they were just like a bit crazy, like stapling their ball bags to things, and it's just like, where's the joy in that? Where's the fun in it? But other than other people laughing at it. But yeah, you mentioned NASCAR there, and I think like Formula One, that's probably the biggest sport over here is Formula One for racing. And the first lap is the most important one, because that's where everyone's going. They take off, and the first couple of turns is where someone's going to crash, because all the cars are so close together. It's not until later in the race that they're more spread out, and you're less likely to going to get contact between two of the cars. But there's somewhere you'll see them flip up, and that's probably the best part of the racing for some people, just to see a crash happen.
But you could be an astronaut. But I want to be a Jackass star. Okay. Wonder what parents would say to that if your kid just came up. I want to be the next Jackass. It's like, you could be president. Yeah, but I want to be like Johnny Knoxville and get my. He got hit by that bull, for instance.
Yeah, I remember that one.
I was listening to the radio. He was in the hospital after that incident had been recorded. And the guy on the radio is like, "This is for Johnny Knoxville, who's sitting in a hospital right now getting nut surgery." And it was Big Balls by AC/DC that he played on the radio. And imagine that, dude. Like, that's where stuff gets me. Like, some of the stuff I could do on there, and then some of the stuff I'm like, I don't ever want to even remote, like getting shot, like with that thing that goes against riots. They shot those pellets. I couldn't do that. I don't think I'd have the balls to even stand in front of that. But they did it for your entertainment, and we loved it. And that's why
the ones where there's some sort of pain involved or injury, they're the ones where you're a bit kind of cringe. Like, why would you put yourself through that? And then you've got them doing the milk challenge, where they're drinking gallons of milk just to then throw up. They're the ones where
I tried that. It fucking works.
Well, they're the ones that my friends in high school did. Yeah.
Another one is bananas and Sprite.
Oh, so weird combo.
The potassium and the bananas, and then trying to chug a gallon of Sprite, it combines in your stomach that literally makes like this amount of pressure and air that literally just forces everything in your stomach out by throwing up. I did it once, and I regretted every moment of it. I was like, shoot, I remember too, because after we were done, it was like when we were like 13 years old, I went back to my buddy's house, and his sister just had a baby. So she was like, "Where's all the bananas? I'm trying to feed my son." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know."
Robbie's ate them.
I don't know where they went.
I wonder if did they do one where it was Mentos? You know, the mint Mentos.
Everybody's doing that
where you
now.
Put them in Coke.
God, that's like the biggest trend. It's like, and then people like throw it in there. Oh shit! And then they go and they grab it and they put it on their mouth and it shoots into the back of their. I've seen too many videos of guys that are sitting like, because like they just got freaking.
It's just all these different challenges that people do, don't they? The cinnamon challenge, that was another one that people went through a phase of doing. Did you ever see that one?
Yeah, I did it once, and I was like, wow, my mouth went immediately dry.
I don't know.
Do you think we could bring back a challenge of politeness?
That'd be nice.
Start saying please and thank you. I fucking double dog dare you. It's like, oh, it's happening now. You ever hear Mark Norman talks about he had to dare his friend to drink or to try his own cum? And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. He goes, I double dare. He goes, fuck you. And he had to do it because it was a double dare. That was a big thing. Like somebody double dared you. You were like, you got to do it now. There's no other exit out. It's like Deal or No Deal. You pick the case. How much money are you winning?
A caseload of cum, by the sound of it.
Caseload of cum. We're ending on caseload of cum, people.
You can Snapchat that.
That's This Week in Metropolis, I would say.
Oh. What, a caseload? No, we're not that bad.
Oh, okay. You want to plug your show there, man? Come on, tell everybody where they can find us.
We're on every week, every Wednesday. Our episodes drop. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Just search for This Week in Metropolis. You can find us there. Thanks for having me on.
This Week in Metropolis. Hashtag every phone booth out there that you couldn't be used because Superman destroyed it.
Exactly.